round two
Oh
of
no,
our,
great.
of our Lewis qualifying videos. The first is it just that Lewis's driving style doesn't suit these cars and that George is able to, his driving style suits them more? Is there anything that Lewis can even do about that? Second, is it Lewis's age? Is he just too old? Is it just that he's got to a point now where he can't improve? We've talked about that a few times, but we can talk about it again here. And third, the one that I think is gonna, we should leave this for the end before we get angry at each other again. Is it just that George Russell is just playing faster than Lewis Hamilton is? Hello and welcome to another episode of the Tired F1 Pod. Ammar, how are you doing?
I'm doing good. Yourself?
You look pensive. You should look pensive, Ammar, because this is round two
Oh
of
no,
our,
great.
of our Lewis qualifying videos.
Oh,
Right. So, hot on the heels of our last video about Lewis Hamilton being past his prime, we're going to look at a slightly easier question. Why is Lewis on the receiving end of a 7-1 drubbing in qualifying to his teammate, George Russell? Just to put that into context, he's only lost in qualifying in 2 seasons in his F1 career to date. First one, 2007 to Fernando Alonso, when he was on pace, if not in the head-to-head behind Fernando. You can thank Mark Hughes for his fuel-adjusted qualifying lap times for that. And in 2014, when Nico Rosberg beat him fairly convincingly in the head-to-head and on pace across the season in qualifying.
thanks for bearing with us.
Yes. It's like an internal feud here. Look, I'm going to break this down a little bit because we talked about one aspect of it last time, but I just want to go through a couple of other different reasons, right? So the first is it just that Lewis's driving style doesn't suit these cars and that George is able to, his driving style suits them more? Is there anything that Lewis can even do about that? Second, is it Lewis's age? Is he just too old? Is it just that he's got to a point now where he can't improve? We've talked about that a few times, but we can talk about it again here. And third, the one that I think is gonna, we should leave this for the end before we get angry at each other again. Is it just that George Russell is just playing faster than Lewis Hamilton is? Have we reached that point? Is there nothing that Lewis can do? And the final thing is, are Mercedes kind of holding back on him a little bit because it's his final year? Is he being held back on? So let's hit some of those in turn. So let's go with driving style first. Let me give you a little bit of background, Omar. Lewis is a proponent of the late braking V style corner, right? So it means that he'll bolt into a corner, brake as late as possible, and then get the car turned and straightened up as quickly as possible to then head off down the next straight. All drivers are defined, I think, by their turn-in, right? The only thing that differentiates one driver from the next is how they approach the entry phase of a corner, and that's Lewis's late brake, get the car turned, get out of the corner as quickly as possible. That is a Ving off of the corner. I think he does it better than anybody else in the history of Ving a corner. The only other proponent of it that you might remember is Sebastian Vettel. He did the same thing as well. And demonstrably, Lewis was better at it than he was over the course of the seasons that they fought a title against each other. But we're currently in a period where that isn't really the way that these cars want to be driven. And you can see that Max, who's the quickest driver on the grid at the moment, wants a really sharp front end. He brakes a bit early and then floats the front of the car into the corner and lives with a really floaty rear end. Because if you increase the roll stiffness on the front axle, so you get loads of front end, your rear becomes unstable. But he wants the front end, so he'll live with the rear. And that's how he does it. That's how he gets his lap time. And the other fast guy on the grid at the moment, Charles Leclerc, what does he do? He doesn't just live with a rear end that's a bit mobile. He induces it. He actually pitches the car in like a Scandinavian flick and gets the rear end of the car turning so that he can use that momentum to get the car turned round. Where Lewis can't do that is to make his style work, he needs the rear end to be planted. And that's the one thing that Mercedes have not been able to give him, both with the cockpit too far forward in 2023 and with the characteristics of this car this season. You saw the pictures of George having a big moment through the first sector in Miami. But he seems to be able to live with that rear end much better than Lewis does. The best example of that was in Jeddah, where in the first sector, Lewis had to lift off miles more than George did to get through the turn 3-4 segment there. So maybe that's it. Maybe that's the problem. Lewis's high energy, late braking style just doesn't suit these cars.
I have nothing to add here other than the fact that the Mercedes car for the last few years has been rubbish, really. So I think part of it is driven by that. But I think your point is well taken. It does appear that his driving style in this era of Formula One, in this iteration of the rule set, with the way these ground effect cars work, with the way his competitors are driving their car, they certainly seem to be much better suited at being able to utilize the strengths and even the weaknesses of their respective cars, whereas Lewis, I think, seems to struggle with it. Yeah, that is a completely plausible thing. It could be said.
Which I have to say is weird because he's normally been very adaptable, but clearly what he has been able to do is in previous iterations is get the car developed to a point where he can get the absolute most. Like, I think he can get anything out of any car, which is why even currently, like when they both get into Q3, George and Lewis are within hundreds of each other. It's not miles, but there's just like a little bit that Lewis is missing because I don't think the car gives him what he normally needs out of a car to do it. The second is, I'm probably linked to that. Are Mercedes backing off him a little bit? But I guess the argument for that is what happened in Monaco, where there was a front wing, an update, and he didn't get it. I think there's more to that story than the way I've just put it. A lot more being that I think he was offered the front wing. He drove it on the sim and said, I don't like it and I don't want to risk it at Monaco. So George said, well, it's fine, I'll have it. And was able to get a better lap time out of it. But are Mercedes, in general, in this season, 2024, going to back off Lewis a little bit?
Yeah, of course. I mean, they would back off anyone if that was leaving, right? Like, and I think they have to back off a little bit more from Lewis because Lewis has been ingrained with the team for a decade plus, right? And so he probably knows a lot more than he's probably forgotten a lot more than George even knows at this point, even having been with Mercedes for his third year now. So it stands to reason that they would do that. It's also, I would say that there's also this element of, because Mercedes have been so up and down, right, with the concept of their car, which they kind of stuck to for a couple of years, now sort of going back 4 or 5 steps and hitting the reset button. I think that this is all a bit murky in that it's not like Max leaving Red Bull, right, where they've had such a good system, such a great way of attacking the car, such a great car in and of itself, right, as we've talked in past discussions, that because Mercedes are also in this weird wonky situation, I think some of this is muddy, but I think at the end of the day, they have to move on from Lewis now. And I think there's enough time passed from the time that he made the announcement to where Mercedes are now. And look, Mercedes are not in the fight for anything. Like, they can tell us whatever the hell they want, right? But they're not going to be fighting for anything. And no matter who wins the championship this year, Mercedes are not going to finish in the top 3. I think that is like one of the safest bets that anyone can ever make. So what do they have to do? They have to start looking at the future. And guess who's not part of their future plans? Lewis. So I think just by that virtue of that,
I guess that's the thing, but that works both ways, right? If they're not gunning for a championship this season, then actually it doesn't, they don't benefit by not giving Lewis everything, because they're trying to get as far forward as they possibly can, as quick as they possibly can. And the driver who's the most experienced at the moment in that team is Lewis. And also backing off him would be would absolutely go against the grain for how Mercedes run their ship and have done from year dot. They've always given both their drivers equal treatment from what I can see. Even when it would have made more sense to back one driver over the other in 2014 to 2016, for example, they did not. And they let their drivers fight each other. I can't see that they're necessarily going to change that now. So for me, that argument that Mercedes are not giving Lewis the same treatment is
so
it
I don't
doesn't
look
make
at it,
sense to me.
yeah, but I don't look at it in that strictest sense, right? I mean, I think that this depends on how you sort of view that, right? I guess the front wing issue aside, right? I think that what I meant to say is that as they develop 2025's car and maybe even looking at 26, right? They're going to not include him in those discussions, right? And I think, again, the question for Mercedes is what are they fighting for this year? They're firmly in the fourth spot, right? And Aston's nowhere going to be on their heels because Aston look lost. And they're not going to catch up with the other three teams. So there is nothing right now that is worth fighting for. So to your point, yes, it's not so much backing away from Lewis or giving him everything, because unless they show up at a circuit where they have this advantage, and there might be a couple of these, like even in Monaco, right? There was free practice looked great. And then guess what happened in qualifying? And now, by the way, it's not just Lewis, even George didn't have a good qualifying too, right? So it's not, they clearly are a couple of steps behind. And now for them, it's a little bit of a reset. So
that to me, what you just said suggests that they're not favoring one driver over the other. I think they're absolutely equal. And any suggestion from Lewis or otherwise that they are favoring one driver over the other, I think is wide of the mark. There's enough data and enough just by eye vibe to tell you that I don't think that's really what's happening.
I also think if we take a moment here, we can also criticize Lewis a little bit for as great and a professional that he is. He too is also adding fuel to the fire, right? I mean, there's a lot of drama happening, 100%. Right? So, you don't clap with one hand only, right? And I think there's a little bit of that. And Toto Wolff and Lewis Hamilton are such big characters, right? They transcend the sport in so many different ways that when there's a separation like this, inevitably it's going to bleed into everything else. So whether you're offered the front wing or not, or whether you told them that you wouldn't take it for whatever reason, I think there's an element of drama in there that sort of supersedes the reason behind it.
Yeah, I mean I think that comment though happened because pre-qualifying there were questions asked of Lewis directly. Why are you on the losing end of a 7-1 drubbing by your teammate? And he said, look, I'm working on qualifying. It's something that I recognize is an issue, and I'm trying to improve on it. And I think all of the comments that came after were because he was being asked the questions directly to start with. So afterwards he had to go, oh, okay. And it's not often that he says anything derogatory towards his team. Like even this season, when he has every right to kind of go, they're screwing me over. He's still been very positive about them. And this is the first time I've seen him say something. And I can only really put that down to the fact that he was being hammered by questions about his qualifying record pre-qualifying. And this was what he came up with afterwards as a okay, well, I have to say something. And it can't all just be down to me. There's going to be some frustration there.
Yeah, but I don't know about that. I mean, look, he's about as secure as anyone can be in the profession that he is in, right? So I don't know that that's necessarily required. Now, of course, we're trying to psychoanalyze the mind of a Formula One driver that's being peppered with questions. Lewis Hamilton's been doing it for how long, right? 2007 to now, right? So yeah, you can say that. I would be more in the camp of that was sort of put out there a little bit more deliberately, as opposed to, oh shucks, I'm just tired of being asked this for the 1700th time, right? So maybe. Either way though, I think this is kind of expected, right? Look, I mean, look at what Lewis is looking at week in and out, right? He is seeing a team in Ferrari that are on the up and up in every which way, in the way they're being organized, in the way they're attacking races, in the way their car is looking, in the way their driver pairings. I mean, you look at everything, there's nothing you can pick on right now with how Ferrari is working. That may not be the case always, but certainly is more time than not. I cannot help but imagine what the psychology of that driver will be when you are in a team that is on the down end of it or hitting a reset button, whatever you want to call that. And on the other hand, you're seeing, even by the way, your customer team in McLaren kind of going out and being up and attacking Red Bull week in and out. So
Yeah, I
whether
agree.
he believes, yeah.
Yeah, I agree. The motivation thing is real. Like there's definitely a little bit of what am I fighting for here? What's the point? And maybe he just won't
And
admit that to
well,
himself. I don't
and
know.
also you can juxtapose that to how Carlos is doing, right? So like he is in the exact opposite situation where he's in a team that is competitive. No, by the way, he has a bone to pick and a point to prove, right? He has a point, whether he might be feeling undone by Ferrari in the way they dealt with his non-contract renewal, whatever that might be, right? But from his point of view, I can see him being extra motivated. And on the same hand, I can see Lewis being like, okay, well, we know this is coming to an end at the end of this year. I know I'm going to a rival. That rival is on the up and up. Like, why? There has to be some of that, right?
Yeah,
Especially when you're
I agree.
struggling.
Yeah, I agree. There's definitely a bit of that involved. Okay, third item on the agenda is age.
Oh, no.
Is Lewis just too old? Is he got to the point where he's on the cusp of turning 40 and therefore it's a decline in his ability? You say no. Why?
Yeah, I say no, in part because not too long ago we did this video talking about how
Here it is.
two athletes, both Lewis Hamilton and Fernando Alonso, and oh, by the way, my guy in Kimi Raikkonen, who did race up until he was 41 in that last race, right, certainly have the motivation. Look, it takes a great amount of motivation, skill, and talent to be one of 20 drivers. Even whatever we think about some of those teams that are back markers, it takes a lot to be there. You can't just sort of walk in there. So I have argued with you in the last video we did on this, is that it is not a question of him being past his prime in the sense that he's lost his mojo. I just think that there is this delta between where he was at in his peak years has come down, which does naturally happen with age to us. And then look at who you have on the other side. We have 5 drivers who on any given weekend can win now, right now.
Yeah, so that's the thing, right? So we'll come to that in a second, but I think that's the difference. Is it because he's declined, or is it that the competition's just got more got better? But okay, so the decline thing is where I have a problem, right? He's so close in those Q3 sessions to George that I don't think you can explain that by him getting worse. He's always had a qualifying issue, right? And those 2 examples that I gave you of Fernando Alonso and Nico Rosberg are the only times he's been beaten because he was up against somebody that could actually was an absolute ace in qualifying. All of his other teammates, even the championship winning teammates, Jenson Button included, was not a qualifying ace. He was on the wrong end of a Fernando drubbing. He's not the driver to compare Lewis to. Lewis, when you're talking about someone that can really, really get a tune out of a car, that is somebody like Fernando, somebody like Nico, somebody like George right now. That's who you need to be comparing him to. And on all of those occasions, he struggled a little bit. He's not been outclassed and left on the sidelines, but there's a little bit lacking there. That's always been there. And I don't think this season is showing anything less than what he has done before. And also in that video, we talked about the fact that actually decline in peak performance doesn't hit until you're about 50. And that's in elite cyclists. They're not people that are doing short, long marathons. They're doing quick sprints. So these guys need to be able to have that explosive acceleration and be able to get a time out of something in a short span of time, which is what Lewis is needing to do in qualifying. So I don't think that age is an issue. The objective evidence from the wider literature doesn't support that. And actually, Lewis's record in qualifying and how far he is away from George right now doesn't support that. Yeah. And I'm happy to fight that one with anyone in the comments. Bring it. Okay, that brings us to our final order of the day, which I left at the end because I'm pretty sure this is going to cause an argument. But I reckon we can do this for 5 minutes.
Let's see.
Is George just quicker? Is it just that George Russell is just quicker than Lewis Hamilton? Tell me why not. You said that you had an issue with what I said last time.
George already. Can we do
Tell me why I can't.
Listen, first of all, I am not a George Russell hater at all. I have said this
kind of sounds like you are
again. No, I know, but I've said this over and over again. it is TBD on him. I cannot blame him for Mercedes putting a shitty car like they did for the last 2.5 years.
So
Just
what
like
does
I
he
cannot
need-
blame.
What does he
So
need to do, Omar?
he doesn't. He just needs to win eventually. Sooner or later, he will. And
He has
and
won.
the few times, yeah. Okay, all right.
No, he didn't win.
Yeah, he did
We're
win.
saying he
Okay,
did.
great. He did. He
Right.
did. Who else
So
won?
he's done.
You know?
He's done the thing that you
Guess-
said he needed to do.
Guess who else won? Esteban Ocon. So let's put him in the same column. No, I think he has the same number of
They're-
race wins as him. How many
They're
race
not
wins
doing
is
the
that?
same thing. They're
Exactly.
not doing
Well,
the same
he-
thing.
and Ocon won with a lesser car too. So okay, fair enough. But that's not what I'm saying. All I'm saying is I see you that win, and I juxtapose that to when he had the chance to really win by
Yeah. What did he
competing
do?
with guys ahead of him in Singapore, and he massively, epically failed. So,
One
but
time.
I'm not even holding that against him. That's what I'm saying. Look, I'm giving you the nuanced thing. I'm not even gonna. I can't look. If you want to say he's faster than him right now, that's great. Okay, 7-1. They're separated by 8 points in the championship. Whatever. Okay, great.
And that's what I'm talking about. I'm not
That's
talking
great.
about better overall as a package. I'm talking about quicker.
Yeah, but we just got done talking, saying Lewis's strength is not in his qualifying. So there you go. I mean, there it is. So George Russell could beat him next year. Leclerc is going to beat him. If he's racing until he's 50, God knows who else is going to. Kimi Antonelli is going to beat him. Whatever. I mean, it's going to happen. It's not. It has nothing to do with that. I cannot crown George right now. I just got done telling you there are 5 drivers who are in the mix for race wins this year. Guess who's not in it? George Russell. And I know a lot of it is because of car. Yeah, it's okay.
All of it is because of the car.
Yeah, it's not. I tell you what. You put him in Checo's seat, and I still don't put him in the top 5.
I would. I definitely would. I definitely would put him as a challenger to Max Verstappen if they were both in the same car. There's enough evidence to say that he would do that. When he was put in a championship winning car in 2020, what did he do?
I mean, okay, that was such a dominant car, right? I mean, we're not going to use that.
But
right?
he was in a car where his feet didn't even fit.
Okay, but that car could have been driven by me, and it would have been fine.
What have other drivers done in dominant cars? Charles Leclerc had Oliver Behrman in the car opposite him in Jeddah. Charles finished second in that race. Where did Oliver Behrman finish?
7th or 6th.
Was there ever any suggestion that Oliver Behrman was going to beat Charles Leclerc in that race?
No.
Did George Russell?
But Ferrari had a car. But Ferrari had a car that would easily beat more than half the field. That's the argument for it. It's not that Oliver Behrman is good or bad or whatever. It's like you put anyone in there.
So
you put Valtteri Bottas in there, and he would win that too. I'm sure he would be in the 6th or 7th.
Yeah, but Valtteri didn't win that race, and he had been in that. He was the incumbent in that race in 2020, and George Russell beat him.
They had beaten him up so badly. Poor Valtteri, man. I won't stand any insult to Valtteri. That's what I will not stand for here.
But you will to George Russell. But I find that very interesting.
I will give you this in the sheer instance that if we define the parameters as qualifying being the benchmark, sure, George is there. And look, I would rate him as someone that is emerging, that is going to be in that group. I just haven't seen enough yet. And the few times that I've seen him have the chance at winning, he has not been able to capitalize in pure competition. I'm not talking about a place where other cars could not win and he had an advantage, whether it's strategy or whatever. When he was given the opportunity, he did not succeed there. But that is not everything.
I'd say he's had 3 opportunities to win a race. One, Mercedes messed it up for him in 2020. Second, he won in 2022. And third, yes, he crashed out, and that was his own fault. But that wasn't a nailed-on win in the same way that 2020 was. So I'm still not sure how much more you need to see. But that's an argument for another day. And I think at the end of the season, we will have that argument properly. But for now, I think that covers us. So the reasons why Lewis is not beating George and is on the end of a 7-1 drubbing: 1, driving style probably doesn't fit with the car that he's got at the moment. There's the thumbs up again. Second, his Mercedes perhaps are backing off him, although I have to say I'm not entirely convinced by that. Third is that maybe age is catching up with him, but I think probably isn't, given the objective and subjective data that we have about him. And fourth, is it just that George is just quicker than he is? Yeah, I think probably. So of those 4, there's two things that stand out: his driving style and the fact that George might just be a bit quicker than he is. And there you have it. That's the Tired F1 pod verdict on why George Russell is 7-1 up in the qualifying head-to-head against Lewis, seven-time world champion Hamilton.
Indeed, indeed. And on that note, give us a like, give us a subscribe, tell us how we're doing. Tell Shez how wrong he is. I love all of you for saying that, and keep it coming. We'll see you soon again.